That's some B-roll.
I'm Mark Lee, CEO of Empower Medicine. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining.
Great to be here. Great to be in the Empower headquarters. Thanks for the invitation.
We're going to be talking about reimagining the how of clinical research, the need, the opportunity, and the challenges. And we're here in the historic Fox Theater in Redwood City, California, and it's very apropos as you're a celebrity. Dr. Seiden was most recently president of the US Oncology Network. Prior to that, had been CEO and president of Fox Chase Cancer Center, and then many years as faculty at Mass General. And so we're delighted to get your perspectives on what we're trying to accomplish here at Empower.
Well, it's fantastic to be here at Empower and in Silicon Valley. I really like innovation in healthcare. There's a lot of things we need to fix. You know, there's going to be 1.7 million people diagnosed with cancer, about 600,000 deaths this year. Those numbers are staggering. But what's really unfortunate is we have so many exciting drugs that are currently in development, but that development takes forever. So one of the things I was very interested in US Oncology, and by extension now Empower, is how do we improve the culture of research? And why is it that it's so hard to do clinical research? I think the main problem is while the vast majority of doctors want to participate in moving the field forward, very few do. And it's not because they're bad people. It's not because they don't have enough time to get things done. It is the complexity of clinical practice.
You know, I mean, I'm really glad that you said oncologists are not bad people, and we're both oncologists. And in fact, I'm married to a community oncologist.
So am I.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So we literally fell in love with community oncology.
That's right.
You know, so we've done a disservice to the vast majority of oncologists out there as a field by making clinical research so hard.
Yes.
And keeping it this separate enterprise from the day-to-day care of patients.
My wife ran the breast cancer research program at Fox Chase Cancer Center. She's very interested in research. When I check in with her at the end of the month, hey, have you put any people on trial? I usually get a sigh. Well, I got one, but you don't have any idea how busy I am. Yeah, it's not that she doesn't like it. She sees it as my day job is competing with my research job. And you know, I think sometimes people think, well, community doctors don't want to do research. I want to dispel that rumor. You know, when I ran US Oncology, I would always, when I went to practices, say, how many of you would be really interested in participating in clinical research? And typically everyone or nearly everyone would raise their hand. And when you said, if it was easy, would you put people on clinical research? And once again, almost everyone would raise their hand. When you said, how many of you have put a patient on a therapeutic trial in the last 90 days? Usually no more than one or two out of a dozen doctors would raise their hand. And when you drilled down into why was that the case, there wasn't a single problem to solve. We don't have enough research nurses. We don't have a data coordinator. We don't have a wide enough variety of clinical trials. I don't have enough time. What was clear was there was no simple point solution that would solve this. And we've tried point solutions. So the point is you really need comprehensive wraparound services to improve the culture of research. And you really have to be very thoughtful and holistic about what are all the different barriers that you have to solve for to really make a clinical research program hum. ASCO recently ran a survey looking at where patients preferred to get care. Would they prefer to go to a community practice close to home? Would they prefer to go to a big hospital system or a large academic medical system? And the majority of patients would prefer to go close to home. So how do you bring very best care, which includes the option to participate in clinical research? How do you bring that close to home?
One of the things that we recognized early on is that, you know, unlike other industries where the day-to-day data that's being generated by the users actually reinforces the process of innovation, we paradoxically have the opposite in healthcare, where routine care and research are separate enterprises, and they actually compete with each other in this avalanche of administrative stuff these docs have to do. And I see this with my wife at home. Like over the last 20 years, the amount of documentation and administrative work has just been crushing, right?
And as I've said earlier, it's not a point solution. You really need an infrastructure or an operational structure that you can sort of match up with the practice to get this done. And it's part of why I think Empower offers the ability to build stronger cultures of research. Well, clearly if you're trying to have a robust clinical trial infrastructure, there's a couple of things that are really essential. First of all, knowing the patient population you have. Do I have patients with a particular mutation or a particular disease? Second is really having a very thorough way of looking at what line of therapy they're on, what prior therapies do they have, understanding, performance status, making sure your labs, and now in 2024, a way to search your genomic data in potentially very comprehensive ways. Clinical research is looking for a totally different data set. And it's not reasonable to say to a physician who's incredibly busy, make sure you meet all the things you feel need to be documented. Make sure you also document all the things the billing people want you to document. And now can you also document all the things that will help the research people? You can't ask them to do that.
I like this idea of just the difference between opportunistic use of data and then purpose-built data, right? A system that is doing this with intention. And as you say, the incentives ultimately drive what happens. And if the incentives are aligned around something other than research, you're going to get something that's useful for something other than research, right? And if you want to create the research-ready data, you're going to have to incentivize it and support it explicitly, intentionally.
So in the practices that Empower is working with, what does it look like the month before Empower's there and say 6 months after Empower's there?
What looks no different is the sense that the doctors and their staff continue to work out of the EMR that they've always been working. What's different is at each phase of a patient's visit, and we introduce this framework of the real-time Kaleido registry, where we're specifying the data, what needs to be in place for this to be research-ready data on top of what is being done today. Data coming in is being structured and standardized for the registry on the Empower platform, separate from the EHR, and then a note for the EHRs drafted by Empower using our Empower platform. And that's on a standardized templated format, which the doctors, when they walk in the morning, for all 20 patients on their schedule, there's a draft note in the chart already.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the feedback been?
Well, for one thing, there's certainly a lot of time savings because this is a huge burden. And beyond that, there's just something about the standardization of the data, understanding the practice population with a much higher resolution than before. That's been appreciated, and that's useful for research and for practice management. The goal is to essentially create a network of oncology practices that are running this new model. It's a model where routine care and clinical research are a single workflow. They're one and the same. And then what we want to do is go to the pharmas as the paying customer who wants access to this capacity, these patients who could participate in clinical research, these doctors who are now clinical researchers and perhaps at a level that they weren't before. And that's of extremely high interest, right? Because there are populations that have historically not been able to go to where the trials are at these major academic centers. People want to see them included in the clinical data, in the clinical research system, and we're trying to make that happen. A few years ago, ASCO talked about this idea of learning from every patient. And I think this ties in nicely to what we're trying to accomplish with the registry, sort of converting entire practices into a standardized program of research-ready data collection.
I think, building robust, reliable, real-world data sets that have the appropriate quality to turn them into what would be called real-world evidence is important. I think Empower offers really something interesting. You have to be at the right point in time. The cancer journey for many patients stretches over many, many years. And while that patient might be a cancer survivor for 5, 10 years, the periods of inflection, the periods of time where a new therapeutic decision needs to be made, might only be 3 or 4 times over the space of a decade. And that period will often be over a matter of just a few days or a week.
But in a way, what we're doing with the registry, like a back door into clinical research for all of these oncologists, right? They're part of the culture. We've essentially established a clinical research infrastructure for them. Now the leap to doing these trials should be a much shorter leap.
So Empower offers a glide path for practices which have an interest in participating in clinical research, but don't have the infrastructure or the operational know-how. It gets them over that activation energy to become clinically research proficient.
We certainly hope so, right? And I think we've talked about the concept that you want a system where the parts work with each other, for each other, instead of against each other.
It's not going to be easy. And I think step one is embracing the fact that it's not a point solution. It's going to be hard. It's going to require human capital, people who are well-trained in research, who are willing to be on site in potentially rural sites, community sites. It's also going to require data. And you're going to need to use that data in a very smart way. As you look at how technology, be it AI or other emerging technologies, maximize the value of these data sets, what's most important is a comprehensive, well-annotated data set that looks at the entire cancer journey. Those data sets are in the community. They tend not currently to be well curated with an eye towards research, but the comprehensive journeys sit in the community. So with Empower's technology platform and with its human element of looking to not only capture what's needed for routine clinical care, but to think forward to what other variables might you need to make this a research-ready database, you could actually build a totally unique database, which could be mined by emerging technologies to really generate important insights that would accelerate what we know about cancer and how do we apply emerging therapeutics to the cancer problem.
As the head of the US Oncology Network, the largest collection of community oncology practices in the United States, it was your passion to extend clinical research into the US Oncology Network. What was really the inspiration for that for you?
When I was leading Fox Chase Cancer Center, I was looking at a number of different opportunities. I was talking to companies in pharma, I was talking to other academic centers. I met with one of the senior executives at McKesson, and I said, what would be your major reason to me to take the job? And he said, you have the ability to potentially change the way oncology care is delivered at a national scale. And that resonated with me. And I think more importantly, my father died when I was a young adult of pancreatic cancer. My first wife died of breast cancer when she was in her 40s. My mother died of small cell lung cancer. I have a nephew who's fortunately a survivor of a pilocystic astrocytoma. I've been surrounded by cancer, and what gets me up in the morning is how can I make a difference in the way cancer care is delivered at scale? And the thing that's attracted me about Empower is it potentially offers a really comprehensive solution for accelerating cancer advances where most cancer care is delivered in the community.